Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Christy, I love that you're like appearing and disappearing and appearing and disappearing.
I apologize. I'm like, nobody wants to see me eat. So every time I take a bite, I'm trying to like disappear for a second.
Yeah, no, I get it. It's nice to see you. Hi, Belinda. So Kate's getting her audio connection going here, and she's going to lead us through our plan for 90-day planning with our teams. The way this works at the learning session is there will be team time after the storyboards. When they hear from all the other teams, they'll go into team-based rooms and do planning for the action period between learning session 2 and 3. And the 90-day planning is just a structured way of getting a handful of PDSAs kind of on the books and mapped out between learning session 2 and learning session 3. So, sorry, I was just doing patter while you were getting your audio and your slides ready, Rachel.
No, thank you so much, Mary Catherine. I was having difficulties logging in. I don't know. I kept typing in the number and it was not accepting it today. So
yeah,
thank you. All right. So we are jumping into supporting 90-day planning. As always, if you have questions as we're going through, please let us know. We're happy to talk through this, but just wanting to give you a heads up of what's going to happen on day 4. So we're always going back to that SMART aim and really focusing on, to meet that SMART aim, we're going to have to test across all of the drivers. So we have those 4 primary drivers. We've been mostly focusing on primary driver 1 for this first learning period, action period, but now we're moving along and going to focus across the rest of the drivers. So we've heard a lot of content around primary driver 2 and 3, but really encouraging teams to branch out and start testing across those drivers is what we're recommending. And so as we're going for that 85% of women who screen positive for maternal depression and access services that will report a 25% reduction in symptoms in the 12 weeks from first service contact, really keeping that as our focus for the next 90 days. And how are we going to get that and how are we going to reach it? So 90-day planning is really that map of what we're going to do now and between now and learning session 3. And it's our plan. It can change, it can adapt, but it's our best guess of what's going to happen between now and learning session 3. And that plan is going to focus on what changes that the teams are going to test across drivers through September. And we're going to look at in order to get to all processing and look at all drivers. So teams are going to have a little bit of time during day 4 to talk about this. But as an advisor and a coach for them, they're probably going to be coming to you guys for more support because it's not going to be a lot of time. And so we wanted to really prep you to how to support what we're asking and how that might look. So logistics. On day 4, which is next Tuesday, we're going to have 30 minutes to just begin the 90-day planning. We do not expect this is going to all happen within 30 minutes. We know that it's not. And so they're going to have some time to begin to focus on what their plan is for the next 90 days. And this is actually not true. We're not going to go into breakout rooms by LIA. We will have time during day 4 for individual reflection. We don't have the capabilities technology-wise to put everyone into breakouts by their LIA. That would be about 40 breakout rooms, and just not feasible for day 4. We were going to try it and then decided against it. So there's going to be 30 minutes where if you want to set up a separate Zoom by LIA, that might be really nice if everybody's still in their own individual space. Or they can just come together to talk about it over the phone. There's going to be that little break where they'll have time to really think about it. And so they'll divide up. Hopefully you can support them as needed. I know it's not super smooth because of technology here, but they're going to need time after the learning session to complete this planning. And so having a check-in with each team to look at what they're thinking is going to be super important after the learning session. Like I said, this is just the beginning of it. So there's going to be more. And then that is going to be due by July 12th. And so you'll submit it to the HV Coin email address. Each LIA will submit, they're going to submit to you and the HV Coin email address. So we'll all have it. Everybody will be copied and know what's going on. All right. So what their role is, they're really going to map out the work. They're going to develop that plan, but what changes they're going to test and when. And your role is to help them identify where they've been successful in testing and where they might want to focus next. And we're going to go through some examples in a minute about how you might be able to do that using the data and the process maps they've already done and looking through PDSAs. But if they're feeling stuck, you might want to highlight some gold standard PDSAs from the change package of ideas of areas that they can test. And you're really going to help them complete that 90-day planning and PDSA planning after the learning session. This is what that 90-day planning tool will look like. All of the drivers will be included here. And so you'll see primary driver 1 on the left-hand side, moving into change ideas. And then you'll get to the actual plan portion. So are we gonna, the PDSAs to run, so are we gonna run this, you know, you can put in examples from the gold standard. You can think about PDSAs ideas that they would like to test in this area. It'll go even through who's responsible and start date and end date. So you'll really be able to map out July, August, and September, what's going to test, who's going to be responsible, when this is going to happen, and have an idea of how you're going to move through those 3 months. I've only included primary driver 1 here, but like I said, all 4 primary drivers are going to be listed, and we're really encouraging testing across drivers at this point. And so it's going to be a little bigger, but it didn't all fit here, so we cut it off at primary driver 1. And I just want to pause here for a second. How is this feeling? How do you feel like LIAs are going to respond to this? And any thoughts so far about this tool and what we're asking?
I think my initial thought, because one of the things that I keep looking at, and I was just chatting it to Jenna, I was getting ready to chat it to Belinda too before you opened it up, was, you know, every time I look at the PDSAs, we always come up with the comment that it's interesting that they're only doing like 1 at a time. So seeing this tool, as much as it might feel like a lot at once, I feel like it almost is like such a helpful way for these teams, since they're newer to this, to be able to do multiple PDSAs at once, and like be able to kind of track it at, like, you know, and kind of look at it. So for me, that's where I went to. I was just thinking like, oh, this might be really helpful to kind of encourage teams, like you can manage doing multiple tests at once. So.
Oh, good. Okay. I think it's a really nice way to track that as well, and even almost divide and conquer. So not everybody has to test everything, and so you can have different people responsible for different tests, and you can track it all in the spreadsheet. So it doesn't, to me, it doesn't feel so overwhelming when you have it all listed out. When it's all kind of separate, I get a little overwhelmed myself. So I'm glad you think it's helpful.
Maybe, Rachel, just one quick question. For the start and end date, person responsible, and then the months of July, August, and September, maybe I just can't read the print on the screen, but so if I were an LIA in a breakout session and I said that I'm going to start this the day after learning session 4, so I know it's for the next action period, but what are those little squares within the month? How do you fill those in? Like if I say I'm going to start one, like I'm just trying to understand the July, August, and September in relation to selecting a PDSA, how that looks for filling it out.
Sure. So the way I use this, and Mary Catherine, please jump in if you use this a little bit differently. I kind of fill those blocks in for when I'm testing which things. So if I'm testing and this change idea 1 for primary driver 1 for the first 2 weeks of July, I would fill those in. And that's kind of where we're testing this first 2 weeks of July. If I was moving to change idea 2 and I wanted to test that in the last 2 weeks, I would fill those in. So you can kind of see the map of how that would look. Mary Catherine, is that how you use this as well?
Yeah, that's typically how I do this. And so it winds up looking like a Gantt chart for any of you who have used Gantt charts. And you're only seeing primary driver 1 here, that this Excel has all the drivers and all the changes. And I think Rachel in a minute is going to get into the fact that like some teams who are meeting the aims for screening may not plan any tests and screening for this period, right? The goal isn't to test in every driver just to test in every driver. The goal is to test in the drivers where we're not meeting the aims so that we get to the smart aim. So it's okay if some teams, you look at their stuff and primary driver 1 is blank. What I would ask is, are you at or above the aim for screening? And then go from there. But yes, I do it the same way. I kind of look over the data to identify where to focus the testing first. And that we'll go through that in just a minute. But then fill in, once I've got like, all right, I want to test these 5 things. We can't do them all in the first week. So who's going to do what has a task that's going to take us a month? So we're going to plan that for August or September, that sort of strategy and project planning. And I fill in the blocks with color for the months or the weeks that I think we're going to be testing those particular ideas.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. So like we said, they're going to have time on their own. And if you want to set up a side Zoom call or a side Ring Central call, that would be great where they could meet as an LIA. But if not, they're going to be thinking about this. And we're asking them to review process maps and run charts and consider some following questions. So what are we currently testing that's resulting in improvement? What do we need to keep testing throughout this next action period? And what measures or steps in the process map still have room for improvement? And we're really focusing on the time between now and September. And so what can we do to make this happen? And so for each driver of focus, like Mary Catherine said, you don't have to test in all drivers just to test in the driver. We're going to identify which changes are needed for the team to get that driver in place and achieve the process aim. And then we're going to map it out. And so what PDSAs will run, who's going to be responsible when you test them, when will you test them? And we're going to fill in that Gantt chart and fill in that plan. So I'll pull up the plan in just a minute, but just continuing through, we're really going to use what we learned in this learning session to help plan the work. So we've done the process maps, we've completed process maps during pre-work, and we've added in data from the run charts to help identify opportunities for improvement. So really reflecting back on that, reflecting back on what it's looking like in the process and in the data. Maybe considering root cause analysis to identify changes that might be most effective. Thinking through the changes that were shared by peers and by faculty during the breakouts that we've heard that kind of sparked those ideas of that's something that I really want to shamelessly steal. And also reviewing those gold standard PDSAs to plan the next steps. So definitely building on the work we've already done. And I just wanted to pull an example of a run chart that was turned in. And we're looking through this process in this run chart, and we're really looking at the data that's in there. So they're already at 100% for screening moms for depression. So that's probably not an area that we're going to focus testing on. We're well above the aim. And so we'll continue on the process map to find a step that might not be working as well as we want it to. Or, there might not be data to support this, but it might be a bottleneck step that is just not efficient and it's not going as well as we want to. And that's where we might focus. Or we really might highlight that data. So here, the 20% mean for measure 3, making offer to make referral to supports and resources, maybe that's where we want to start. We're at 20% now. How can we grow by testing different ideas? If a team didn't put in data to their process map, that's okay. We can always pull the data up on the website and look at their individual team data to kind of identify those things if it's not already in the process map. So looking through, you know, maybe we've been testing in this area of a 30-day check-in with a home visitor, and we've finally gotten to above the goal. We're at 100% now. So maybe we need to continue monitoring this to make sure we're continuing to stay above the 85 and continuing to stay above the goal. So we might also want to focus more on the percent of women with a positive screen who verbally accepted that referral. That's below our goal line. And so maybe that's where we want to focus as an area for the next 90 days. So really keeping those questions of what have we already tested and what more could we try as a focus for this planning period. And so we're going to share a lot of the same slides with the LIAs during that learning session. I think I have 15 minutes to share this information with them, and then they'll have 30 minutes to really dig in individually or as a team on their own. And then we'll come back together and have this random pair sharing. And so they'll be put into groups of 2 or 3 where they can talk to each other, share what they're thinking for the next 90 days. And then we'll come back together and have that time to share what we learned or things that we're thinking of after that. So that's kind of the flow of day 4. Mary Catherine, anything to add as I go to find the maternal depression Gantt chart? I somehow missed pulling that up.
You know, the only thing I add is actually a question, which is if we are not providing individual breakout rooms for the LIA teams, and we're just saying like, all right, this meeting room is now on pause, and we're going to come back together to discuss the work you're doing in the next 30 minutes. Is it possible for awardees to set up those breakout rooms for their teams? Do we need to tell teams about this so that they schedule a way to meet for those 30 minutes? It's just a logistical and technological question, which, you know, I'm sorry, that's not, it's not that interesting, but I'm afraid we're going to say, here's the start, and we're going to send teams off for 30 minutes. They're not going to know how to get together for those 30 minutes. The awardees won't know how to talk to the teams for those 30 minutes. And when we bring them back together to talk about what they've done, they're going to be like, well, we tried to get together and put. So what do the awardees think is a feasible solution? Do we need to let the LIAs know that they need to set up a way to meet for that time? Do we do that through you? Do you typically set those up? What should we do? Because it's really impossible for us to do the small breakouts for every team, but it's not going to work if they can't get together in the 30 minutes.
Yeah, maybe I just want to, so they'll be breaking out, but so are you asking like for each team to get like, so an agency team individually? Because we have Belinda, Christy, myself, Sarah, Emily as improvement advisors. So we could join, like if we sent a Zoom to the Providence Center, for example, one of us could go with them. But are you saying like that level of meeting, like with one specific team, or because we could divide up our team and meet with a few of them amongst ourselves, and we're happy to send a Zoom and say, you know, here's a Zoom that we're sending to you. We're going to have the Providence Center and South County together with Christy. And then Jenna's going to have, you know, 3 sites, and we can send Zooms during the time block on the agenda for them to jump to that Zoom account for that time. And then say at the end, go back to the main EDC meeting. We can do that. But I don't think if you want to have one person with each team, we don't have enough on our team to meet because we have like 12 sites. So we could do a few together, if that makes sense. I don't know if my interpretation of it is aligning with.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were asking. And
okay.
You know, I think it's designed, if this were a face-to-face meeting, the team would sit at a table and talk to each other, and you guys would walk among the tables, and we would walk among the tables, and try and help people who looked confused, stuck, or like they weren't doing it. Right? So the question is how best to do that. If you think the best way to do it is by pairing them, then that's fine. the other thing, like in my Zoom account, I can do a breakout room. I would probably take those two teams, break them into breakouts, and then I would toggle back and forth between the rooms. But that would be my preferred way to do it, because I think the teams really just need to talk to each other. This is like a work planning session.
Yeah.
And
That's
Kate, I don't know if Kate is able to talk or think this through, but Kate has a number of teams. Elizabeth has one team. So Elizabeth, if you're on, I think if you have the capacity to set up one room for your team, that could work.
Yeah, I can definitely set one up for my one team.
Okay. And send like a digital invite or something so they know exactly where to go during the break in our.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Yeah, we have an internal CQI team meeting on Monday morning with our team, so we'll make our final plan there when I talk to Sarah. But it's either what you said, Mary Catherine, we'll send a meeting and toggle between the breakout rooms with the two teams, or maybe we'll ask the LAs to send us a Outlook invite, and then we leave the site and plan to jump to the other. I don't know. We'll see.
But another thought, Jenna, is that since we still have our Zoom Pro accounts for right now, is that we could set up our own Zoom account, and then we could do our own breakout rooms. They would just join the one account, and then we could separate the breakout rooms. We could preset it, because some teams combined, right? So like we could, I mean, we could talk more about it on Monday, but I'm just thinking logistic wise, that would obviously be much easier where we could send them one big link, and then on our end, we could get it all set up.
It's true. I forgot about the Pro account and how we have that capacity. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
We will probably do that. Sounds good.
So Rachel, I'll have to work with Jackie, who has like 400 teams in Illinois. She doesn't. She has a lot of teams, but it's not 400. It's 14 or something.
We will never complain then.
You guys would have like 14 she has in your state.
And I will reach out. I'll reach out to Kate in Georgia as well to see if this is something that she can set up.
Okay.
That's great. Thanks, y'all. There was just no good way to do it on our end to separate out to 40 teams. So thank you so much for helping us problem solve and coming up with the best solution for the team. Okay. So just wanted to pull this up quickly to share with you what this is going to look like. So like I said, it's all floor drivers. You're going to be able to track the different change ideas that we have in here. So which PDSA you're going to run. So say we want to start in thinking about mothers and babies, and we want to run a PDSA on implementing, of course I can't edit right now. We want to look at testing in mothers and babies, implementing a role play, or test out a role play for encouraging comfort. You might have already done this, you might not have, just an example to think through. And we're going to say that Susie is going to run this, and we're going to run it from July 1st through July 12th. And so that's really that first 2 weeks of July, and I like blue, so we're going to use blue. And you just highlight, July 1, 12. And you just highlight those first 2 weeks we're testing in this area. This is what we're going to test here. And say, we're going to move from testing in mothers and babies, and we might continue this test and continue testing around it, but we're also going to be looking at training and education. And there is a new training coming up that we want to look at, and we have a specific idea that we want to test out with all of our home visitors, or maybe even reflective supervision. We want to work on some reflective supervision processes to make sure that home visitors are feeling supported. Maybe using an agenda to bring up maternal depression data and cases for each reflective supervision, and that might be our test. And that's coming from, maybe Jane is running this. And well, we can run this at the same time, we've decided. So maybe we think that we're going to start this on July 1 as well. and wrap it through July 12th. And we're going to also highlight here, because we can do this. We have 2 different people. We can test in 2 different areas here. And they would just continue on. And so, you know, thinking through maybe, you know, the next 2 weeks of July, or what we can learn in August. Maybe there's a training coming in August that you would want to test around. So thinking through the next 90 days very strategically, across drivers and across different change ideas. Anything to add, Mary Catherine? Nope. Okay. Any questions? And we might be able to pull an example of one that's completely done that another team has done. So you can have another example. It wouldn't just be blank. Or we can share like a fake one just for ideas if that's helpful to you. But that is what this will look like. Going back to slides. All right.
And really the goal is to have the work plan laid out, and then drafting the PDSAs, if they're not, or adapting the gold standard ones, is a separate project. But rather than focusing on drafting a single PDSA, which will only take them through the next few weeks, the goal is to kind of lay out, all right, now that we're this far in, to get to our SMART aim, these are the drivers we're missing. Which changes do we think we'd like to try? And how would we plan that between now and September, October?
Mm-hmm. So we've already kind of asked these questions, but what additional support might teams need to do this successfully? And then are there any questions you have about what you're doing or any supports that you need?
I think me personally, I'll just take a look at teams. In our monthly calls that we have one on July 1st. We do percentage of where teams are testing. Again, most of them are testing in primary driver 1, but I think teams specifically, I'll probably just do a quick chart of like, here's where you're meeting the aims across the primary drivers, and here's or where you're not, and here's where most of your testing is. So that in the meetings when we join them at our fingertips, we have, okay, the Providence Center is mostly testing in primary driver 1, and oh, they're exceeding the aims consistently each month for screening. So maybe we should have them focus on primary driver 2. And, you know, so I think if I put that together quickly for our entire team to have at their fingertips when jumping, they may be able to facilitate that conversation nicely.
You know what, Jenna, you could even share that with the LIAs when they come to that, and you have a draft of it in your coaching log, right? Yeah. The measures are red, yellow, and green in your coaching log there. So, you know, I think that that's a terrific idea. If this were an in-person session, we'd probably have the teams do that first and then do this piece. But in a shorter session, if you have the capacity to provide that, I would recommend it, actually.
True. That's good about the coaching log. I totally slipped my mind. I don't know why about the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just look at where they're testing on top of it too, just quickly.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've shared the coaching log with them before, but you could consider doing that or adapt it to something different that you feel more comfortable sharing. So that's a shortcut.
Definitely. Good point. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. Yeah, I was about to jump in with us saying, don't forget your coaching log. You do this. You have this.
So essentially the teams will have the, not the Gantt chart, but the one that you were showing in their breakout rooms that will facilitate, will jump around, you know, to ensure that we have equal time with them to plan out their next steps. Other than that, I don't really have any other questions, but.
Okay. Great. And they'll have their process maps. They'll have access to their data as always. And so, and maybe that's something we can encourage at the beginning, is to pull that process map up so they can share it with each other easily in their own little sessions. All right. well, if I know we went through this, you know, sometimes it takes a while for things to sink in and for questions to pop up. So if you wake up tonight thinking about this and are stressed, please reach out. And please don't be stressed, because we're here to help you. And so just send us questions as you're thinking about them. We will respond and help you in any way we can. This is not all on you. We're a team here. So please let us know how we can support you. I had this is a very big side note. I'm buying a house currently, and I am buying a house for myself, and I dreamt a couple of nights ago that I was having to survive a zombie apocalypse in my house. Because I didn't watch anything with zombies. And so I'm just telling you, do not let this stress you out and keep you up, because it's not that. It's not the zombie apocalypse. We got this. All right. So just a reminder, this is your awardee checklist for July of 21. The action period call is coming up on the 8th. I know that's pretty quick after our learning session here, learning session 2. We'll have all of the data and PDSAs, as always, due on the 15th. Make sure you're following up with your teams that haven't submitted. Review those PDSAs on the dashboard, which you guys are doing such a great job at. We saw that reflected in the data earlier. So thank you, big thank you. I know that's time consuming, and so thank you for taking that time to give them the feedback that they need to keep going. That coaching log is due in the 19th, and then we'll have our COP call on the 22nd at 1:30. So that's what's coming up besides the learning session next week. But then just remember and keep in mind all those tips that Mary Catherine provided earlier about building will and how you might incorporate building will into July, and how we can keep these teams rolling. Mary Catherine, anything to add?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay.
There's a lot going on, but you know, the stuff I'm reading in the dashboard and all the work the teams are doing has been just inspired and inspiring. So I really am, I'm very optimistic about how things are going. And this is, you know, just an effort to focus us on, this is a really particular period of time during a collaborative where a little extra focus or mental energy on building will and excitement and maintaining that enthusiasm is warranted. This is the moment for that, you know.
Yeah. And then if you don't mind, please fill out our evaluation to let us know what we can do better. And Kate, I think, is going to put that in the chat. And she did. Thank you, Kate. And we look forward to connecting next month in July. We'll have 3 teams presenting their coaching log, and we're really excited to hear how that's going. And so North Dakota, Mississippi, and Rhode Island are all up for July. And just let us know if anything changes and we can help.
And it looks like we're going to end early. Is there anything else off topic different from what we had on our agenda that people need or want to ask? Because we have the time. You can use this for whatever it is you want, including saying thank you very much. It's time for us to get off the phone. But I just, you know, before we wrap it, let's give you guys blank slate and make sure there isn't something you want to ask each other or us. It's a wrap, Rachel.
Can I ask one quick thing?
Yeah, of course.
I promise I won't keep this too long. On the last call, I think her name is Tracy. I don't know if it's a state lead, I'm sorry, or if someone from an LIA, but it just made me think of Rhode Island. The Tracy P, I believe. But essentially the team was taking mothers and babies and talking about small numbers. And it sounded like, from what I could gather, and I didn't want to interrupt on the national call, that there may not be that many individuals in the denominator for some measures, I believe. I could be wrong, but it reminded me of Rhode Island. And
yeah, it's a positive, she has a low number of positive screens in a program of, you know, typical size.
Right, because we have a handful of teams like that. And I was emailing our data analyst this morning, preparing for mothers and babies, because like I was saying, our ETA report is pretty exhaustive with other information outside of who's included in the numerators and denominators. We're trying to adapt it to say, of those already in supports who aren't in the traditional measurement strategy, who were offered mothers and babies. And I don't know if we can layer on the 25% improvement, but just have outside of the measures some data to show the teams so that they have something meaningful to look at outside of the screen. After the screening measures, they like fall off.
Right.
So I don't know if, considering that team has already taken mothers and babies or is in it currently, I don't know if they had anything that we could look at or touch base offline. Or we can share our data at some point. I don't know, but it just made me think of it and I didn't know how that was going.
You know, I don't know is the short answer. And the longer answer is I've been meaning to reach out to Tracy to have her and her team potentially present on an action period call. She was the one who shared during Brenda Jones-Harden's presentation the other day, the Reflective Supervision Administrative Supervision Guide, which I quickly stole and brought to my hospital-based team. So I think that she's got a lot of stuff up her sleeve, and we should ask her your question and mine and see if maybe her team would want to present on the action period call.
Okay, yeah. Interested in learning more. I heard, it just reminded me of Rhode Island in a little way, and I'm not completely the same, but
yeah. And Elizabeth, I think some of your teams have small numbers. One of your teams had some small numbers, but is focused on some of those downstream measures as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you know if they've figured any? Did they do mothers and babies? I don't remember.
No, so they had planned to, but then in talking to their nurse liaison from the National Service Office, they've decided to focus on the MHI that's part of that curriculum instead. But our team that has dropped out of HV Coin, our Parents as Teachers site, they are taking the mothers and babies training because they learned about it through this. So I'm excited that even though they were a little overwhelmed with some of their other work in the HV Coin, that they are still working on some of these goals.
That is exciting. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else, Rachel, I won't interrupt you again.
No. I'm glad that you asked that question. Well, thank you all. We'll give you 9 minutes back in your day, and please fill out that evaluation in the chat so we can continue to build our strengths and our capacity as well as supporting you, and let us know if there's anything we can do. We'll see you
next
on
week, everyone.
Tuesday. Yeah.
thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.